So now that we've seen the three different loop structures that are available to us in Java, the for loop, the while loop, and the do while loop, we can start to look at what happens when we put one of those loops inside of another. So a nested loop is the term used to describe one loop completely contained within the other. And it's a similar scenario to what we saw previously with the nested if statement. And I think the best way to do it is just to get straight into looking at an example. The example we're going to take a look at for this particular topic is to develop an application that will print the following pattern to the screen. So you'll see we have 3 rows of 5 asterisks. So let's pop into TextPad now and get stuck in. Okay, so here you'll see I'm in TextPad and I've already got my file open and saved as repetition2.java. I've also then got my comment at the top with the name of the file, the name of the author, and the date on which it was written. We start our class as normal, public class repetition, uppercase or, because that's how we saved it, and all class names should get an uppercase letter. Repetition2. Then we have our main method header, public static void main string args. Close my curly brackets in case I forget later, and inside my class then I'm simply going to try to print those stars. So I think what we'll try to do first is print a row of 5 stars using a loop. So supposing the very basic thing we want to do here is just to print 1 star. System.out.print star. Okay? But I want 5 stars in a row. So I'm going to use a for loop. Int I equals 0, I less than 5, so I'm going from 0 to 5, that's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I stop when it becomes equal to 5. And then I equals I plus 1. So I'm counting 1 at a time. Then I have my system.out.print star, and I close my loop. And if I compile this, and I run it, I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 stars. Okay? Now we wanted 3 rows of 5 stars. So what I want to do is I want to repeat this 3 times. So let's encase this loop in another, and I'll use another for loop. For int I equals 0, I less than 3 this time, I equals I plus 1. And then I just indent this loop inside so that I can see the difference. Okay? And then close my loop on the very outside. So my outer for loop starts here and closes down here. Okay? And then I have my inner for loop which prints 1 row of stars. Now you'll see here again I've got int I, not best practice. It works okay technically with the for loop, but if you try to use any of the other types of loops, you might have, actually it won't even work with the for loop because I've initialized my I here, and that exists for all of this loop, which means when the other one is inside it and we try to initialize or declare I again, it's going to have an issue. So let's change the inner one to j. So int j equals 0, j less than 5, j equals j plus 1, and then we print a star. Okay, so I is declared here and j is declared here because we don't want the values of I and j interfering with each other. Okay, so technically now this outer loop should repeat printing my row of stars 3 times. Let's compile it and see if it does. What I've got here now is 15 stars all in a row. Okay, so what do I need to do? At the end of each 5 stars, I want to go to a new line. So not only do I want to repeat printing the 5 stars, but I want to repeat going to a new line. And the way that I do that is I add system.out.println nothing. So println will just bring it to a new line. There's nothing in the bracket, so it's not going to print any text. But what will happen is each time into my loop, I'll print my 5 stars, I'll go to a new line, and then my outer loop runs again. I'll print 5 stars and I'll go to a new line, and then my outer loop runs again, and I'll print 5 stars and I'll go to a new line. So let's compile it and have a look. Oh, it says here, cannot find symbol, system.out.println. So I can see here I've left out a T. So we compile that again, that's fine. And when I run it, we get 3 rows of 5 stars. Okay, so that's worked much better. So just let's have a look at the values of the counters and how they work. So my program starts and I initialize I to 0. Then I come in here into my inner loop and I initialize j to 0. I check is j less than 5, and if it is, I print a star. Then j becomes 1. I check is that less than 5, and I print a star. J becomes 2. Check that that's less than 5, print a star. J becomes 3. Check is that less than 5, print a star. J becomes 4. Check is that less than 5, print a star. J becomes 5. I check if that's less than 5, and it's not, so I print a new line. I increase my value of I, and then I check if that's less than 3. And if it is, I go back in here, my j is reset to 0. I repeat printing a row of stars. I repeat printing a new line. Then I increase the value of I. I becomes 2. I check is that less than 3, and it is. So I go back in here and run my j loop and print all of my stars. Print to a new line. Increase I, so I becomes 3. I check is that less than 3, and it's not, so I exit the loop. And that is how I get my 3 rows of 5 stars. So my inner loop is looking at my rows, and my inner loop is looking at one single row, and my outer loop is repeating the number of rows that we have. And that is an example of a nested loop. Again, it would work if we put a while loop inside a while loop, or a do while loop inside a do while loop, or we put for loops inside while loops and vice versa. We can mix and match. But essentially, a nested loop is when we contain one loop completely inside another. And we will look at these again a little bit later in other topics, so don't panic about them just now.